Hey guys, my name is Ismas and today we're going to be trying something different. We're going to create an entire movie scene inside Blender using the Eevee render engine. So this is the sequence we're going to be making. I was getting tired of the step-by-step tutorials, so I thought we could just use all the knowledge we have collected from the step-by-step tutorials and create something amazing. This video is sponsored by wingfox, a training platform geared towards artists who want to become professionals in the 3D industry. And they have this amazing course about creating this fantasy world. They were kind enough to hook me up with a $10 coupon code that I can give away to my audience. So if you are interested in getting into world building using Blender, and also use the coupon code provided in the description to get the course at a discount. So let's get into the scene and see how to get started. So to start off, I added a plane, and this is going to be the flow of my scene. I wanted to use the simplest steps to achieve the best results, just for efficiency, and because I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this. So what I did, I added a plane, slapped on a tailable single image texture, and I used that for the base color and the normal map, and also I think for the roughness of the image to get that rough flow surface that I was going for. And then for the walls, I just also got this temple looking texture that I got off from textures.com. It's a website where you can get free textures daily. I think they give you about 10 images daily you can download, and every other day you get another 10 images you can download. After those 10, I have to either buy or wait for another day to download more textures, but it's a nice resource to download textures. So I just use this and a knife tool to add in those details, to do the least work, but also in a way that attains me great results. Ian Hubbard has a great tutorial about this process. You're just projecting the texture onto your geometry so that you capture those small details. Yes, so I wanted the windows to be translucent, or to be kind of a semi see-through. So what I did is I separated the window and I gave them a new texture, a new translucent texture, blended it with the principal shader, and I used the image mask, the image texture as a mask to blend between the principal shader and the translucent shader. And when you add a light behind that, it makes it seem like the window is glass and translucent. So I duplicated this around into different walls because I didn't want to build the entire building. Also added a grind map to break up the roughness just a bit, so that I have some nice reflection details for the scene. You can see, using this type of workflow, you can achieve amazing results without putting in a lot of work. It can also be a great way to do concept art. I wasn't happy with the scale of the scene, so I scaled it down because I think the scene was too large, and that usually affects your lighting and your volumetrics. So I scaled it down to a more real-world scale just to get better results for the volumetric lighting, which I added using a cube and then adding a volumetric shader, a principal volume shader, and playing around with the setting. Adding in some volumetric adds a bit of detail. You can see how I'm reusing just a single asset that I created from the texture to add more detail, more interesting details in different areas. You can get these project files and all other projects I've created, I've worked on my CG Trader account at cgtrader.com/smilesvfx, or you can get it on my Patreon page. That is patreon.com/topchannel1on1. I'm also working on a Teespring store where you can download digital assets that like these. I won't be selling any t-shirts, at least not now. I wanted to add some visual interest by adding in a few lights in my scene. So what I did was create a plane and add a subdivision surface, duplicated it around and gave it an emissive material to make it seem like these large lights that I use mostly on stage lights and in music video production. And yeah, so just adding some visual interest in different areas. And because a Blender, if it doesn't really support mesh lighting, I had to add an area light in front of these lights just so we have some direct light from those lights. So whenever I'm not sure about my lighting, I usually just turn off everything, every single light, and I turn on one by one to see how each light is affecting the scene, how it's adding on the scene. And when I'm not happy with how the position of or the effect of that light is adding in, I just switch it off and play around with the scene. So for the characters that I added into the scene, I got them from renderpeople.com. They have a few free models they give away, so you can just go to renderpeople.com and find yourself some 3D characters to use. So then I imported the character into Blender. These models come with PBR textures, so you just have to connect the textures into their corresponding principal BSDF inputs, and you are good to go. You can see I was doing a lot of experimenting with the lighting. At some point I thought of doing it as a day scene, but I didn't think it would give it would have the same stake as a night scene. So I just decided to just go with the night scene, and the night scene usually look far better than day scene because you have more control over the lighting. As you may already know, I have a library of a lot of assets, so I just went into my asset library and got a chair to use in my scene. So you can see me here. Again, you can get these assets either on my CG Trader account. I'll be leaving links in the description, or my CG Trader or my Patreon page. If you're Patreon, you can request them and I'll be giving them to you. I'm also setting up a Teespring store where I'll be selling mostly digital assets, these models and any other digital assets that I might have. So yeah, all I have to do was now pose the characters into the pose I wanted. Now it was time to pose the male character, but give him a gun to point at the lady. Yeah, so I wanted to add a gun in his hands, but I didn't want to go through the process of modeling a gun from scratch. So I went to free3d.com to get a free 3D model, Blender model. So I just got that there and I used it in here. Unfortunately, the model that I got didn't come with textures, so I had to find a way to add the textures there myself. So after importing it into Blender, you can see it lacks the textures. So after importing it in Blender, all I did is import another image texture and projected the geometry and projected the texture directly onto the geometry. You can align the different polygons you have on your geometry onto the texture, like you see here. I wasn't worried about how the gun was going to look because I just wanted a silhouette of it, since there were no close-ups of the gun, so it didn't matter how detailed the gun was going to be. As long as we see the shape and some bit of texture onto the shape it was okay. I was fine with that. Yeah, for the baby stroller, I had to change the colors a bit because I think pink didn't really get the feeling that I wanted. So yeah, so now that the posing of the character is done, I just had to work on my lighting and my composition, move some of the objects around to get a better composition and make sure that every part of the scene that I wanted to be visible was visible. So just repositioning the assets a bit and trying to get a story into my scene. For the lighting, I wasn't sure about the red lights in the scene, so because it didn't really give a realistic look, it didn't tell any story in this. It didn't add to the story, so I decided to change them to a more natural look so that it seems like maybe it's a night time. Yeah, that's just moonlighting in the background because the red wasn't really tying the story together. Yeah, so in some areas that were dark, I added a very faint line spotlight effect in those areas, just so to have some small detail in those areas. Also, the baby stroller was not very visible in some areas, so I had to add in some small lights just so I can get some nice details of the baby stroller come through. I think I was finally happy with the composition. I just had to play with a few settings here for the volumetrics just to see how things go, and it was time to animate my scene. Yeah, I knew that just animating the camera was not going to work since we had people in the scene, so just having them as still statues wasn't going to really work. So I just did a simple animation for the bones and just some basic animation just so we have some movement in the characters to have the illusion that they were having a discussion or an argument or something. I like doing these kind of tutorials because they show you how the knowledge you have learned in the step-by-step tutorials or in the different tutorials you have learned on this channel or in any other channels, and how you can apply those steps in creating something that is usable in the world, that is usable in a project. Yeah, so after doing everything, I think it was time to do a render, and yeah, you're about to see the final results. I think uh, it took about 2 to 3 hours to render on my laptop, which you can check out the specs under the description.